I'm Pauli. I'm a mom, a wife, a pelvic floor physical therapist, and founder of No Kegels University. I have helped thousands of women stop leaking, enjoy intimacy, and feel proud of their bodies, even after having kids. After years of listening to women wonder why no one talks about leaking, how they should properly recover after having a baby, and that pleasurable intimacy is possible, I started to get real frustrated because I believe that no mom or woman should struggle when there are answers. It became my mission to shed light on the lack of postpartum care and the lack of discussion on issues that relate to women and their health, even if they can be uncomfortable sometimes. It also became my mission to change the conversation on women's health, the pelvic floor, and more. Here we go. Episode 52, DIY Your Own Pelvic Floor Plan. Years and years ago, when I was little, I would go with my dad to Home Depot. And so many times we would be in the checkout line, and I know they still have this book, so I'm curious if you know which one I'm talking about. But there is this bright orange, it's the Home Depot orange book. I think it has like 1, 2, 3 DIY plans or 1, 2, 3 home improvement or something. And I remember one day so vividly that my dad bought it because he wanted to be able to do some projects around our home. And the internet was around, but it wasn't as full of DIYs and YouTube channels and such back then. I'm probably giving away my age a little bit here. And my dad bought it and hardly ever used it. And what he did oftentimes is he would start a project, create a pretty big mess, or at least maybe finish some of the demo and get started on the actual project work. And oftentimes it would sit, or he would get busy with work because he is an anesthesiologist. And so oftentimes he was always on call and having to leave. But oftentimes he would end up having to hire somebody to come either help him finish it, or he would have a friend come help him. But it just really wasn't in his skill set. And I don't fault him for this. In fact, it was kind of a fun little family joke because it just really wasn't in his wheelhouse. It wasn't one of his strengths. And my dad has a lot of strengths, but doing home projects really wasn't one of them. And fast forward now to being married to my husband, who is very handy. He's very mechanically inclined. He has spent years and years in the field of construction. And I remember when we were dating, I think we might have been engaged. I'm not quite sure, but we were at Home Depot and I asked him, I said, hey, do we need this book? Because it was that same book that I remembered from my childhood that my dad had. And I just was convinced if you were going to become a homeowner, because I think we either were under contract or were looking for a home or something, I just was convinced that you needed this book to know how to do things. And my husband looked at me and said, no, I don't need that. I know how to do things and I can figure it out on my own. And that is actually true. My husband is so handy, and for that I'm so thankful because I don't think that we have ever hired out any project, but for all the homes we lived in, for our rental properties, he does probably almost 99% of the work himself, maybe a little bit of help here and there from friends or past coworkers. And I tell you this because these are two very different stories. They're both men. Men tend to be pretty handy, but one of them, my dad, really struggled to figure things out, even though he had that DIY book or the 1, 2, 3 Home Depot book. And my husband is just really skilled. I'm pretty sure that's just how his brain works. Which leads me to one of the questions I get asked a lot. And it might be something along the lines of, well, couldn't I just follow all the exercises that you present in your No Kegels University sorority and I'll be able to reach my goal? Or, well, if I just follow along in your pelvic floor your way, the DIY pelvic floor strengthening plan, if I do that program, won't that be enough? Or what if I just do Kegels for the rest of my life? I get asked those questions, and to me, it's almost relatively the same thing. And I wanted to be able to address some of those so that you knew my honest answer. And if you remember, part of my mission and one of the promises that I made to myself when I started this business several years ago was that I treated each patient, each client, even future patient, future client, as if they were my sister or my sister's best friend, and they felt like they were getting inside information and all the extra tips and tricks. So I will be completely honest with you. And remember too, I have over 13 years of experience of working with so many different types of personalities and characteristics of women. And you'll probably find that some of these answers might surprise you. So the first, can I do it on my own just with using the help inside the sorority and your podcasts? And the answer is yes. Yes, you probably can, because you'll notice that I teach my VAB3 method, my method for strengthening the pelvic floor, very freely. I talk about it a lot. I talk about it inside the sorority. I've talked about it in answering women's questions inside the sorority because there's a Q&A in there where you can ask questions. So ultimately, the answer is yes, you could. My hesitation in saying, yes, 1,000,000%, you could totally get to your progress or to your goals or have the outcome you want just as fast as you were working with me. And the reason I hesitate to say that has more to do with there are some nuances that I have intertwined and created with my specific method when I work one-on-one with someone. So, of course, someone working one-on-one where they're getting all their plans updated and personalized by me each week or every month or whatever the plan happens to be, they are also getting a lot of my experience where I've seen, oh, when this happens, we need to pivot and add this in. These are things that you may not necessarily know how to address or even realize that they're coming up. That being said, though, I've had many potential, I say potential because they didn't end up paying me money to work with me, but inside the sorority or using my podcasts or using the information that I've shared on Instagram, they have done that. But what I will tell you that has been the consistent theme that they have said is, I have fallen off the wagon a lot more because there's not that accountability. And they said probably if I paid the money, I might have been a little more consistent. So I think that plays a role too. And the other theme that I noticed is they said that because these are all women that I had talked to and we had considered putting together a plan, but they just chose to try on their own. And they said that their timeline felt a lot longer than when the timeline I presented to them. Like if we compared them, they said, I think it probably took me a little bit longer, which I would probably agree with. So to say that you could do this on your own just by all the free content and the information that I have shared, yes, you probably could. So there is my honest and true answer. I want to quickly interrupt and tell you it's here. Bye Leakage, the comprehensive program for pelvic floor strengthening. I recently updated it and I can't wait for you to join. I want you to stop doing Kegels and wondering if they're even working or if you're doing them right. You deserve to know how to effectively and successfully strengthen your pelvic floor, stop leaking when you cough, laugh, jump, sneeze, have pain-free intimacy, improve your energy, and feel proud of your body, even after having kids. Bye Leakage is well worth over $3,000. but I'm offering it to you today for less than a quarter of that price. There are 12 sessions, and each session outlines the same programming that I have given to my patients in the clinic for the past 13 years, where thousands of women have gotten the results that you're only dreaming of. Each session is full of exercises, tips, tricks, and trainings. There's even roadmaps included in Bye Leakage for pregnancy, postpartum, and prolapse. This program has been designed to give you a framework to last you a lifetime. I've also included 3 bonus programs just for you: End of the Urgency, Trampoline Strong, and Diastasis Recti 101. You can get it in the show notes, on my website, or in the link in my bio on Instagram at BeyondTheV by Pauli. So the next question that I get asked often is, well, could I just do Kegels on my own, and could I stop leaking or insert whatever goal you might have? And the answer, I feel like that's a really loaded question. And I suppose that there have been women out there that have used Kegels and have, and I'm using air quotes here, you can't see them, successfully strengthened their pelvic floor, end of quote, where they have stopped leaking or they have reached their goal. However, what I have seen is that while this may work for a short time period, long term, it doesn't work. So either other issues will pop up or that same issue will come back. And the reason is because Kegels don't work. And I'll say this again because I feel like I'm a broken record saying it, but for those of you that are new, they don't work because our pelvic floor is a lot more complex than how social media and the internet portrays it. They like to portray our pelvic floor as a group of muscles that are strung like a hammock from the front of us to the back of us at the bottom of our pelvis. And as long as you squeeze and relax, that's all you need. But they're failing to understand that there's 3 layers, that our pelvic floor muscles do significantly more work than just stop our urine stream. They participate in stability. They participate in intercourse. They participate in support to our organs. They participate in weight transfer because our pelvis is such a powerhouse, and I like to call it Grand Central Station because it kind of decides where all the, I shouldn't say kind of, it does decide where the force or the weight or the load gets transferred. And it does so many other, it has so many other roles that so many other muscle groups don't have. So then you consider, okay, well, what if we looked at an Olympic athlete? Are they just squeezing and relaxing these muscles that they rely on their paycheck for, that they rely on to go to the Olympics, one of the biggest arenas in the entire world, for their level of performance? No. You want to know when we use the squeeze and relax? For things like, I just had surgery, and maybe you keep doing that type of muscle contraction for a week after, and then you move on to something more. There's no other muscle group that you just squeeze and relax, and that is enough for that muscle to do the job that it was designed to do. So to say that someone could just do Kegels and reach their goal, possibly, but I suppose I look at this more with a level of, maybe I can see more from a bird's eye view. Yes, you might have solved those issues at that moment, but I also worry about, and I say worry because again, I'm treating you like my sister or my sister's best friend. I worry that other issues are going to come back and you're going to go back to those Kegels because that's what you did before and that's what helped. And oftentimes it doesn't work. And then you get frustrated, and then you might feel like, well, it worked last time and it's 10 years later or 15 years later. And well, maybe it's just my age. And then you begin to settle and just assume that that is how your life is going to be. So I hope that you can see why I take such a stance that Kegels don't work, even if they'll work for a little bit. And here's the deal. I'm never going to get mad at anyone for choosing Kegels over choosing my method, because I think to some degree you should trust you and what you know. But I also think that there's a level of trying to expand maybe the areas in your life that maybe you don't know. And so I've had patients that have said, or I should say potential patients, when we talk, they said, well, I'm gonna go try my Kegels, and then if I need you, I'll come back. And sometimes they do come back, and sometimes they feel ashamed, and I never want them to feel that way because it's part of their journey. And maybe you do need to try Kegels for you to really feel confident that you can move forward with me and my method. And that's totally fine too. Each journey is your own journey. And the last question sometimes I'll get asked, I'm starting to get it asked more frequently, is why is doing your online program, my Bye Leakage program, how is that any different than seeing another physical therapist? And I'll add another level to that question is, what's the difference of working with you one-on-one versus using Bye Leakage? And I'll tell you a couple different things here. Coming to see me in person is going to be a much more customized, personalized experience, which would make sense, right? Anytime you have one-on-one attention with an expert or someone who has more experience or knows more than you, you are going to glean so much more than just doing their program independently. And oftentimes it can be a matter of preference. It could be time. It could be your environment as to why you would choose one or the other. And I'll tell you that my online program, Bye Leakage, that is essentially the same method and the same programming that I have given to my patients over the last 13 years. And if you haven't heard the story about when I was pregnant with my first child and putting this together as a beta group to see if it would even work, because I knew I could help any woman that came to me. I just didn't know if I could take my method and generalize it. And the results blew me away. And a lot of my beta group didn't really finish or follow through, and I'm not mad at them. It was really great information for me, which is why accountability and why I have my elite pelvic floor coaching and training option available, is because I think that accountability level is often missing. But that's a tangential piece. But Bye Leakage is essentially some of the same programming that I have given my patients for the past however many years, 13, 12, who knows at this point, 13 plus years probably. And then if you compared doing my program versus seeing someone else, because not everyone lives here in Utah to come see me, what would it look like? And that's a really hard question for me to answer because I don't know what their methodology is. I don't know what their training is. I don't know who their mentors were. That's really hard for me to answer, but I'm going to make a general statement, but I also know, and I also hope I'm wrong on this. Let me say that too. But the way I was taught when I first started was to do Kegels. And because my patients weren't getting better, because I started questioning some of the methodology, that's when I kind of started to step away from how I was taught right out of the gate. And I am thankful. Let me be very clear about this. I'm so thankful for all my mentors and for those women who poured into me as clinical instructors and mentors in the beginning of my career, because each piece of my journey was vital. And a lot of those continuing education classes that we take still teach that Kegels are the right thing. And while Kegels can give you an okay outcome, what I have observed in my methodology and from the mentors that I've learned from, and I've learned from mentors outside of the pelvic floor community, if you will, and that's where my methods are a little bit different, or maybe a lot different. So anytime someone is teaching you Kegels, I really do wonder where they're coming from on that, because if that's all they're having you do, then I guess part of me really questions, are they really understanding the pelvic floor and what it's supposed to be doing and what it's capable of? And I've said this before and I'll keep saying it again, and I want to put it on a sweatshirt, but moms are Olympic athletes. And I think that we should train our pelvic floors that way in order to keep up with all that we have to do. So I know that that was several different ways to answer that question, but I also feel like it's important to consider all of your options. And because those are questions I get asked often, I think it's important to talk about them. And the other part that I will throw in here is the DIY program. So I have a program, it's called Your Pelvic Floor Your Way, and I teach you how to DIY your own pelvic floor strengthening program. And I will say that this has probably been one of my most favorite trainings to create because it's challenged me in a way to take what I know and to put it into a concise, easy to follow method in order for you to DIY your own program. And I feel like this was really needed inside my No Kegels University course and program offerings because there's a lot of women who may not financially be able to do the Bye Leakage, where it really is a lot more detailed and will serve you well. But the DIY program, or the Your Pelvic Floor Your Way, is a really great fit for those that have a lot of self accountability, who, when they say that they'll do something, they will do it. This particular program really, really helps those who do well on their own. And that is one of the reasons that I created it. And so I'm going to throw in another question that, well, can I get the outcomes I want with or if I did the DIY your own pelvic floor program with you, Pauli? And I would say, yes, you probably would, because I guess the caveat there is, if you are really good with self-accountability, meaning that when you say you'll do something, you'll do it. And when you make a plan, you'll stick to it and you plan ahead and those types of things. Because in that, I teach you that methodology, and I go into detail in each of the 3 phases. So you legitimately can kind of walk yourself through. So it's like a mini training program to the No Kegels University method. And it's why I created that course. And it was fun and it was challenging to create. But that's also another option that you can use. So let me kind of walk you through back what we talked about, some of the different ways. So could you reach your goals with just doing all the free content that I offer you? So still using my methods, but with the free options and resources that I have put out there, which you are welcome to go to my website, which is www.beyondtheVbyPauli.com/resources. I'll put that in the show notes, but that will be able to provide you with a lot of the free resources out there. But can you reach your goals with that? And yes, you might be able to, except that there is not a lot of detail, and it's kind of it's scattered out there, just not to confuse you, but just to really give you a taste of how I do things and what my method is. The second one is, can I strengthen my pelvic floor just by doing Kegels? And the answer is possibly, but long term, I would really question if you could. And then the next is going to see a pelvic floor physical therapist versus seeing me in person versus doing my online program, Bye Leakage. And that answer is going to vary. And of course, I would say working with me one-on-one, where I get to cater to you specifically, would be the best way. And that would be my elite pelvic floor coaching and training program. Or you could use my online program, Bye Leakage, which is a lot of the same programming that I have given my patients consistently over the last however many years. And then, of course, it's hard for me to answer seeing another pelvic floor physical therapist, especially if they're just only teaching Kegels, because again, to me, that suggests that their understanding of the level of complexity and the function and the purpose of the pelvic floor just isn't there if they're assuming that Kegels is enough. And the last option that I threw in there is, could you reach your goal, or could I, if I'm speaking about you, could I reach my goals using your Pelvic Floor Your Way, the DIY strengthening program? And I would say, yes, that gives you a much higher chance than working with me one-on-one or the Bye Leakage, because one, it's a lower price point, but I also walk you through all 3 phases. So if this is something that you're interested in, any of these particular options, I'll have them listed in the show notes, or you are welcome to schedule a Your Pelvic Floor's Next Step call with me, where you and I can plan for certain your next step, and then we can decide from there what's the next best thing for you. I hope this episode was helpful for you with some of the questions. If you've ever wondered, well, what's some of the differences of, just using your free content versus using your courses versus using Kegels versus working with me or another pelvic floor physical therapist? Those are my honest answers, and they are based on experience from what I've seen over the years. And I also want you to remember that you're an heiress and a queen and everything in between. If you enjoyed this episode or even wondered if I can help you, check the show notes for more details. And to see what else I'm up to, follow me on the socials at BeyondTheV, by Pauli. Because I'm changing the conversation on women's health, the pelvic floor, and more, I still need your help. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend or two. See you next week.